Brett Dolan on the play-by-play for Touchdown Radio, along with a lot of other organizations. And Brad, appreciate your time as always. You've had some really interesting games in these last 3 weeks. Ole Miss surviving LSU. Penn State does not survive UCLA. And then Georgia, you could say, survived Auburn last Saturday, couldn't you?
I think you could. It was a bizarre game, a lower-scoring physical game. I think we expected that with plenty of controversy, 4 hours of replay reviews and whatnot. But really looking forward to this one this week with not just a top 10 matchup, really kind of a top 7 game.
Can you explain to me, because I'm in the middle of watching Arkansas, Tennessee, and I know there was a situation with a timeout with Kirby Smart where he called a timeout, but really didn't call the timeout. I was a little confused about this. What happened with that situation?
Well, the play clock was at 1. He was calling for a timeout. They gave him the timeout. Then he said he didn't want a timeout. He was merely clapping or something, but clearly he was, calling a timeout. So they gave him a reset rather than having to either utilize a timeout or take a delayed game penalty. So that was part of it. Of course, Auburn's fans were already fired up because they thought they had a touchdown at the end of the first half that would have been 17-0. Instead, it was a fumble at the 1-inch line, and then they give up a field goal, so it was 10-3 instead of 17-0. So they were fired up to begin with, as was Hugh Freeze, and that only kind of accentuated more of the vitriol later on in the game with the timeout that wasn't.
Brett, you got 4 teams in the SEC that are winless in conference play. Arkansas, A&M, Mississippi State, Florida. Kentucky takes on Texas. Auburn takes on Missouri. Give me one team you think can get that first SEC conference win this weekend.
I tell you what, Matt, I want to pick Arkansas. I do, and I'm having a hard time because of how good A&M's defense is. I know A&M's offense isn't terribly electric, and I am a Colin Klein guy. I feel like he needs to be getting more pub for jobs like Oklahoma State and others as a potential head coach. What gives me pause, though, is the fact that I think, if I'm not mistaken, opponents against A&M are 2 for 33 on third downs in the SEC. So,
wow.
They have, and I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I'm not off by much because I think Auburn was 0 for 13 against them. So it is, it's been a tough situation and tough sledding to get points against that defense. And I feel like Arkansas's offense can score and score against A&M. I don't know if A&M can light up the scoreboard and win a 30-27 type game. So I want to pick Arkansas. I'm not quite there yet.
Is if Florida loses, maybe Florida wins, but it seems like Phil's brought this up, that it seems like every week there's coaches getting fired, and I still can't believe that Franklin got fired at Penn State. But does I forget the coach's name right now at Florida, Muschamp, right? Who's the
Billy Napier? Billy
Napier. There we go. I was in a time capsule. We've been doing things on the 90s last, so I almost came back. But is he the coach going in after the bye week? Do you think that just the string that's going on with these coaches getting fired? Do you think he's next?
I probably do think he's next. You won't have to know his name after this next week, more than likely. And listen, Florida could still win games. I'm not saying they can't. I don't feel like he's lost it like maybe James Franklin did for a 3-game span as far as his locker room and the ability to compete. I just think at times they just haven't been good enough. But it does feel like the wheels are in motion for Billy Napier. And if nothing else, the you must win now and you can't have 2 or 3 game losing streaks has kind of taken over college football. So they've provided these athletic directors cover now going forward for the remainder of the year if anybody else wants to make a move and get rid of their guy.
Well, I don't say if it feels a foregone conclusion, but the way things go at Auburn, if you're in the cycle that they're in right now, even with Freeze, you don't last into a 4th year. It's just not the way it works there. Auburn, a game that Arkansas can win, Brett, because right now we're looking at the schedule and thinking that's probably the best chance.
I think so now, but there's one thing about Auburn. They have 4 and 5 stars all over that defense. They're playing freshmen. They're playing sophomores. These kids are good. The wide receiver Coleman was the number 3 player in the entire class. Jackson Arnold, I know he hasn't lived up to it. He was the number 3 player in his class. So there is talent there. Some of it's younger. I don't feel like Freeze is in danger immediately. That could change. If one team's been victimized, they had the hideout play against Oklahoma where it shouldn't have happened, and they lose a close game. They lose a close game at Texas A&M. They would probably argue they should have been ahead 17-0 with a touchdown that wasn't called. They have not been the most fortunate team. Now, Having said that, when you're Auburn, and Clay may have mentioned it this week, you are judged by how you do against your two rivals, and your two rivals oftentimes are some of the best teams in college football, in Georgia and Alabama. If they lose to Alabama at home at the end of the year, they'll be 0 for their last 12 against Georgia and Bama, and I know that does not sit well with the folks on the Plains.
Hey, Brett, who's the best one-loss team? If you're looking at Alabama, Oregon, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, just to name a couple. I think Oklahoma has one loss. Who in your mind right now is the best one-loss team in college football?
I think you'd have to go with Alabama because of what they've done since week one and how they flipped the switch. You kind of give teams a little bit of the benefit of the doubt if they lose early as opposed to late. They've done that. Their quarterback is playing at a really high level. There are some teams that I think, Matt, like let me use Nebraska as an example. They play Minnesota this week, and they could lose. It's on Friday night. If they win that game, that schedule opens up. I mean, they could be sitting at one loss 9, 10, 11 weeks in. You can't do that right now with Alabama's schedule. So I give them credit for that. I think there's a number of really good one-loss teams, but I would probably put Alabama at the top of the list currently.
Georgia's a really good one-loss team. You'll see them for the second week in a row. But this Ole Miss team is undefeated. But it also feels like they might be primed for the picking in Athens.
It's been fascinating to go back. I mean, Kirby's in his 10th year, Phil. He's only played Ole Miss 3 times. They took a 7-year hiatus. There's been a couple of big wins. Last year, the Rebs had the win. A couple of years ago, Georgia just dominated Ole Miss. It's really fun because, again, I kind of want to lean Ole Miss on this one, but I'm still trying to kind of play it out in my mind because I know how good that Georgia defense is. And they're not an electric offense, but Stockton makes the plays. He does enough to win. It may not be sexy, but they get it done. Since I think it's 2021, there isn't any team that's won more games in college football than Georgia. The team that has had the most yards has been Ole Miss. So when you look at these categories, wins in the SEC, yards allowed or points allowed, these teams are not just top 2, top 3 in the conference. They're top 2 and top 3 oftentimes in the country in these categories. So I think it's a wildly compelling matchup between two coaches that have been really good. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate what Lane has done in the last 3 or 4 years with the wins he's picked up at a school that wasn't a power football school before he took over. And I think Lane said it best this week. Kirby has become the new Saban. Well, there's no Saban, so now Kirby is Saban. And he wins games like last week where his team doesn't play well, at least offensively, but they still find a way to get it done. So I'm really intrigued to see how this is going to play out at Sanford Stadium on Saturday.
A team that has one loss, it's kind of under the radar because, I mean, they lost it to, I'm talking about the USC Trojans. They're 5-1 with one loss. They're going to take on Notre Dame. Then they get that Nebraska team that you were talking about. Can we start believing in them, or do you think they're going to come back down to earth?
I think we can, but again, we'll know more because I think Notre Dame is a really good team. If you said, are they one of the 12 best teams, I would probably say yes, and if not now, later on in the year. Obviously, if they lose against USC, that will not be the case. But what Notre Dame has to love is the fact that they were fearful after an 0-2 start that USC would not be relevant, and even a win against them would not be enough. Well, USC is nationally relevant now. They have a really good offense, skill position players, as you would expect them with their quarterbacks and their receivers, and they're slowly building this thing. I know they don't jump out when you start talking Big Ten programs when you've got Ohio State and Oregon, and we started this year talking about Penn State, but I think they've kind of moved their way up there, especially with the win against Michigan.
Who's the Heisman frontrunner right now? Is it the quarterback at Indiana? Is it Ty Simpson at Alabama? Kind of. I mean, we still got a lot of golf left, so to speak, but right now, who do you think maybe is it the quarterback out at Oregon? Who do you got as the Heisman frontrunner?
A couple of weeks ago, I would have said the kid Dante Moore at Oregon. I don't feel like it's Mendoza. I don't think his numbers are going to be good enough at Indiana. Certainly after watching him play against Iowa, I thought the Hawks did a tremendous job against him, even though they somehow lost that game at the end. I think Carson Beck would almost be the guy that you'd put the money on. Now, what I want to ask my analyst who came from that school and won a Heisman this week is, this schedule for Miami going forward is terrible. I think they'll probably play Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game. So there's two things. It doesn't give him the opportunity for a Heisman moment because they're going to be heavily favored, but he shouldn't have games where he loses the Heisman either. So I would feel like he might be a guy that's in a pretty good spot going forward as long as the Hurricanes take care of business.
I know you called some Penn State games over the last few years, too. RB texted in, what's your opinion on James Franklin to Arkansas?
I don't know. I mean, you have to give James some credit in the sense, Phil, it was 2.5 years after the Paterno-Sandusky thing when he took over that job. He's had 10-win seasons. He's gotten close, but he hasn't been able to get over the hump. And I understand why. After watching that UCLA game, you wonder, why is it he loses every close game? Well, you sit there for 3 hours and you watch the clock management and you watch certainly some of the plays they run, and you start to understand a little more. I think he's going to get a job. I think he's going to get a high-profile job, which is going to help out Penn State with the buyout. It's going to really chew into what they're going to have to pay him if he would sit on the couch. To me, it always felt like he really loved being the CEO. But was he the guy that was in that room trying to figure out on 3rd and 5 what was the play that was going to win the game or what they could do in a defensive stop? To me, no. And they invested at such a high level. They felt like their investment was similar to Ohio State and Georgia, but the results weren't there. And when you're in that top 5 in spending and your results on the field aren't, it's going to result in some turmoil and even a firing. I think he's going to get a high-profile job. If I was an AD, he would not be my guy.
All right, just end here quickly with the baseball playoffs. And Smoltz had mentioned this yesterday, because they were talking about the Brewers-Dodgers series and how Snell and Yamamoto have combined to throw 17 of the 18 innings in that series. I mean, that's the way the Dodgers win the series, by not letting their bullpen get involved in the game very much. And Smoltz is like, well, I hope this brings back the starting pitcher. And look, it's not going to. It's playoff time. If this was regular season, they'd have given the ball to the bullpen in certain situations. You save your pitchers for these moments where you're going to let them go out there and do their thing. So, I mean, I'd love for the starting pitcher to regain the importance that it had, but when I'm watching these playoffs, it doesn't make me think that that's about to happen.
No, I would tend to agree. I would say this: Blake Snell signed a big deal and he wasn't healthy, and finally it doesn't have a lot of tread off his tires this year. He's healthy and he performed extremely well. That's why they went out and got him. The Dodgers bullpen has been a weakness. They've had a ridiculous amount of injuries. So to ride those horses and give them a chance to win has been really crazy to watch. But then if you're the Brewers, you're like, well, we've navigated through 2 starters. Who else do they have left? Oh yeah, Shohei. So it's going to be a uphill climb, I would think, for the Dodgers or for the Brewers to overtake LA.
You don't always win your first bet. That's why MyBookie has you covered. Use our code HOGS, HOGS, and your first bet up to $500 is fully covered. If your pick doesn't hit, you get it right back with our Bet Back bonus. Go to mybookie.ag and use the code HOGS to claim your Bet Back bonus. MyBookie's, where bettors win together, because bragging's good, but cashing in is better. And your first bet is fully covered. Use our code HOGS.
Must opt in during the bet to use the Bet Back bonus.